Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, we're going to begin on Tes Vavam and Beis by the Mishnah at the bottom of the Amud. Says the Mishnah, Hazevach mafagalas hanasachim mishikdishu b'kli de Rameir. Rameir is of the opinion that he says that there's a din of pigul, even when it's already in the kli. Rashi says, Shehashayis mehen, someone who consumes them, chayiv kares mishum pigul shebikach b'kli. Once it's in the kli, shuv ein lehen pidyon, it cannot be redeemed. The kedushasan kedusha, and its kedusha is sanctified. That's Divi Rabbi Rameir. Hanasachim ein mafalgin es zevach. However, the nesachim will not be mafagel the zevach. It's similar to what we said. We look at the ikr versus the tafel. Like, for example, the toida and its lechem. So when it comes to the zevach and its nesachim, that when it comes to nesachim, it cannot cause a pigul for the zevach. And the Mishnah, as we saw previously, explains like this: Ketzad hashaychet es zevach. If you're shechting the carbon lechem imenu lemachar, and your intention is to eat the carbon at the wrong time, so who nesachav mufugolin. Not only do we say that the carbon is an issue of pigul, but also the libation. However, it's l'hakam nechasev l'machar hanasachim mufugol, because you had improper machshava regarding the nesachim. However, hazevach ein mufugol. Says the Gemara. So Tanaban. So nichse behema chayav alehin mishum pigul. So what is this going on? So in the event that a person has nesachim regarding a carbon, so your chayiv be for pigul. Memnei shedam hazavach matirin l'karv, because it's the dam of the carbon what is matter you to be makrivit divrei meir. So amrlo. So that's the reason why the nesachim you'll be chayiv because of pigul, because it's connected to the dam of the zavach. Those are the words of Rameir. So Amru lo li Rameir v'loi other maybe zivcha hayoyim. I understand. I thought you can bring the carbon today, v'nischo ad yud yomim. They're so disconnected that you could even bring the nesachim attached to that carbon 10 days later. So how is it possible that they should be linked in this way? So that is the question. So Amrulahen afanilu amarti el baboyin ima zevach. The only time I say that the nichse behema you're chayiv because of pigul is only if the nesachim come at the same time as the carbon. Amrulay efshir l'shneisel zevach acher. Said, well, can't you always just use it for another carbon, and therefore because of that maybe it should not be pigul. So Merav Ksavar Meir Hukva b'shchita kalach mitoida. It says that once you do the shchita, it's linked to that, just like the lechem of the carbon taida, that when you do the shchita of the carbon toda, so the breads are attached to it, so too the nesachim. Tanaban. Lug shemen shel mitzayra, when it comes to the oil of the mitzayra, so we say chayavan alav mishum pigul. If, let's say, a person has pigul at the time of the shchita of the carbon asham, so then it will be pigul also on the lug shemen. B'mnei shedam asham matiru l'bahoinais. Divrei Rameir. It was the bringing of the carbon asham and the dam of that asham that allows you to be able to make this application of oil on the thumb, on the different parts of the mitzayra. Rameir oimru. So that's Divrei Rameir. So I'm a little Rameir again. V'lo other maybe Hashem hayom v'lugo bikan v'ad sorry yomim. It seems so far apart. So Mohen afanilo marti. I only said that you're chayav el b'boyim ha'asham if the lug shel shemen comes to on the same time. Or efshel shneisel asham acher. So Merava, you can't exchange it because Ksavar Rameir hukva b'shchita kalach mitaida. Question 1. Be'elu beis dvorim, regarding these two matters, Rameir says the shchita is kaiveya shel yishanaisim gazevach acher kilach mitaida. So he said, First of all, when it comes to the sachim that comes with the zevach, as well as the lug shem and the mitzayra, that also comes together with its carbon asham. Okay. All right. Let's keep on moving. Let's see the next Mishnah now in Tez Zayin Madalef. Pigel b'kaimitz v'lo b'lavayin. Now, when it comes to a mincha where there are certain karbanos in which you have shemen and lavaina, so the lavaina is a matir, but so is the kamitza. So there's two things which are a matir. The question is, this Mishnah is the famous Mishnah of whether you can be mafalgin b'chatzi matir. Is there an issue of pigel when all you're doing is having it on one of the two matirin? So pigel b'kaimitz, if your pigel is only on one of them, that when you're being maktir the kaimitz, you're thinking about improperly about the shirayim. However, you don't have any improper machshava regarding the frankincense, or b'lavaina b'kaimitz rameir oimer pigel. So again, this is the famous machlokas Rameir the Tanakama, whether or not you're mafal b'chatzi mater. The chachamim who generally said that there's not going to be a din of kares, they will agree to Rameir b'minchas chayte v'minchas kanais. Shem pigel b'kaimitz shu pigel b'chavnu of kares. Kaimitz hu hamater. So the only issue is because you had two matirin, you have the lavaina. But in a situation like the minchas chayte or the minchas kanais, in which there is no lavaina, so there's no second matir, so therefore, if you're mafagel on the only matir, obviously you're going to be chayav kares, if a person will eat it then. Shachat echad min hakavasim, so that's, again, you had this machshava only on one of the two matirin. However, let's say a person is shachat echad min hakavasim. Let's say you're shachting one of the kvasim, and while you're doing it, it's echol beis chalois lamachar, that the two chalois, and this is on Shavuos, the sheil echem, you're going to eat it at the wrong time. Hikdir echad min habezichen, or let's say you're makdir one of the bezichen, just like one of the kvasim, echol beis sedarim lamachar, to eat one of them tomorrow, one of the breads. So Amer Omer Pigel v'chavanu of kares chachamim ein bo kares anshivaga b'chol mater. So again, it's a similar type of idea. Shachat echem min kvasim. Let's say you shacht one of the kvasim, lechem min l'machar. So he pigel that one keves. So you need both of them are a matir. But over here, since there's two of them and you only had improper thought about one of them, certainly that one is pigel. So if, let's say, your intention was, again, only in one of them, so that one is pigel, but the other one is kosher. But if, let's say it's that your intention was to eat the other one tomorrow, then both of them are going to be kosher, as we'll understand in the Gemara. So, Omer Rav. So we have a machlokas over here, Rav and Shmuel. Rav says the whole machlokas between Rameir and the Tanakama is only the situation, shenasanas kaimitz b'shtika. The first of the, so there's two matirin. Your first matir, which is the kamitza, you didn't have any improper thought. That's a lavaina b'machshava. However, the second thing, which is the lavaina, that was where you had the improper thought. So on that situation, as a machlokas, if your second machshava was improper, do we say that mafalga mechatzi matir? Very interesting. That if your original machshava was improper, but the second one was shtika, so we say still, when even though you were quiet, probably your shtika was linked and connected to the original improper machshava, and therefore even Rameir will hold that you are going to be chayiv in that situation. Even the chachamim will agree to that situation. You're going to be chayiv. Ushmuel Omer no. Adayin hu machlokes. Shmuel says that's not true. Even in the situation where originally your machshava is on the kamitza, on the first matir, and the second on the lavaini is b'shtika, still is machlokes. That maybe you're not going to be chayiv kares. So Yosef Rava, so Rava was sitting, the Kaimrul Hashmaisa, he was going through this sugya. Es Rav Acha bar Rav Huna Rava. So there was a question that was asked to Rava. So he said as follows: B'medavar morim b'kamitza. The only time we say this whole thing is b'kemitza. So Rashi, the bahanach gimel avodos. But regarding the three avodos, ein damil hen b'lavoina, not necessarily is it the same as lavoina. Hilkach kulhu materhu haylacha mafarish b'gemara kaman b'shmaisin dahaika b'lavoina. Okay. So again, the only time is when we're talking about the kemitza, like we're talking about the kemitza of the mincha. Uva matan kli, and the putting it into the kli, uva hiluch, all right, and bringing the kemitza to the mizbech. Avo ba loy lahaktara, if let's say it's coming to you to be burned, nasanas akaimitz b'shtika, v'esal lavaina b'machshava. So the kemitza was without machshava, and the lavaina was an improper machshava. So we say like this: es akaimitz. Or let's say as a kaimitz b'machshava v'asal lavaina b'shtika. So in other words, it doesn't make any difference if your original thought was b'shtika, or your original thought is b'machshava, which is we're going to see here. As a kaimitz b'machshava v'asal lavaina b'shtika. Rameir omer pikav b'chadol kares. L'chamim omrim ein bo kares ad sheyifag b'chol mater. So this is obviously a question because we clearly see. It's even a machlokus in the situation where the kemitza was b'machshava, the first machshava, and therefore, apparently, we do not say this svara. We don't say this concept that that we say shekol ha'isal das rishaynu ha'isa. Apparently, we don't say that's a divrei hakoil. Katanimiya nasanas akaimis b'machshava yasal lavana b'shtika pligi. So it is a machlokas. So it sounds a lot like Shmuel, not at all like Rav. So it means that you actually did the lavaina first. So your original machshava was with the lavaina, and then the second one is the ketairis. And therefore, since the lavaina went before the ketairis, so therefore again, that's where the machlokas is. But in a chinami, in the event where it would be that in the case of the kaimitz was first, then lavaina, and you only had the machshav on the first one, then maybe everyone would agree. One second. There's two issues with this. First of all, chada dahainu kamaisa. It already said that. But od detanya achar kach. It says the words afterwards, so it's clear that the order was not what you just said. So Tirgum Rav Chanina bebeis deis. What does that mean? Says Rashi, the echad hikter kaimitz b'machshava. There was one kain that was makter kamitza with a machshava. The achar hikter chavero, right, which means a different kain, right? There was a different kohen, a second kohen that did the other makter. Mishum hachi pliga rabbanan the lekel memer al das rishayna oisa. You can only say al das rishayna oisa if it's the same person. But over here, if it's two separate people, then you can't say that. So that's the answer. It's not so muchach. That's what it's talking about. But that's the teretz. Tashma b'medavar amurim. When do we say this whole matter? Says Rashi, Matana achas pigol. That one blood application could cause pigul, even though sometimes there's multiple blood applications that are done depending on the carbon. Hanitnin al mizbeach achitzayin, when it was put on the outer mizbeach. Avol damim hanitnin al mizbeach apnimi. Let's say there are certain times we have blood applications that are put in the mizbeach apnimi, namely the mizbeach hazav in the kodesh, could go. And for example, we have the mem gimel shel Yom Kippurim. We have 43 times in which the Kohen Gadol is involved in blood applications on Yom Kippur. Says Rashi, Ches hazois the par. There is 8 sprinklings of the par, bein habadim, like by the Aron. Achas l'mal v'shevel amata. It's always 1 up and 7 down. V'ches the seir, and then so there's 8 of the par and 8 of the seir, so that's 16. Harites zayin, like our daf. Connected behechel, and so there's 16. Then there's another 16. That's 32. Let's just see the rest of this Rashi. Hari lamed beis. V'dalid kronos hamizbech. There's 4 kronos on the mizbech hapanimi. Hari Lamed Vav. So you have to put them on the 4 kronos. So now we're up to 36. We got to get to 43, right? So B'zayin al taharo shel ois mizbeach. Question is, what does taharo mean? There's a two-way machlokas in Masechtas Yoma. Kishahadam hapar vasir maruvin biyachad hari mem gimel. So what they would do is they would eventually mix the blood of the par and the sir together, and then they would do another 7 blood applications. So then there's 43. And then not only is there 43, but Akasesu shel par kohen mashuach. There was also 11 regarding the kohen gadol. Says the par for the kohen mashuach zayin hazois al haparoches, 7 on the paroches, and 4 on the matana, 4 blood applications on the mizbeach, as it's brought down in Sefer Vayikra. V'chein par helam davar. Also there, it's the same thing. Yachas esu shel par helam davar. So there was again 7 and 4. Anyway, shel tzibor, par helam davar shel tzibor. Again, which is brought down by Masechtas Horius and discusses exactly when is that done, an erroneous psak, etc. So pigul, we said there's going to be an issue of pigul, ben b'rishayna, ben b'shniya, ben b'shlishis. It doesn't make a difference if it's the first, second, or third place, because as we said, there's 3 basic places. One is ben habadim in the Kodesh Kedoshim, and then you have, that's 16, then you have another 16, as we already elaborated, Keneged HaHeichel, and then afterwards you have these other 4 on the Kronos and 7 on the Mizbeach HaPanimi, where you mix them together. So it's like 3 different situations. So you have to actually be mafago on the whole thing. So let's look at Rashi. This is Berishayna is Ben Habadim, Bishniya is Al HaProiches, and the third is on the Mizbeach HaZav. So we see that they argue here. Katani Mia Pigel Ben Berushem Ben Mishnah Ben Bishlishis Uplegi, and they argue here as well. Which is, so what's the problem? Says Rashi, Afil Pigel Berishayna Plegi Rabbanon Amaloimrin and Shnev Shlishis Al Das Rishayna Isa. So, and we're dealing with this, it's only the same kohen gadol, right? So how are we going to talk about another kohen gadol? There's one kohen gadol. No one else can do this avoda. So, and if it, according to them, even if your first machshava on the Berishayna is pigel, it won't affect all of them. So we see again, it's a kash on Rav. Okay. Uplegi v'chitem b'mishtei deyes hanichel man yemer b'par b'fil b'damushal par. So again, the question is, how could it be shtei deyes? Let's say we're talking about a situation, as Rashi says, shemeis kohen gadol or shirbo keri l'achar hazois t'ben abadim b'shimish achar tachnav. So you can say, okay, there was a second kohen gadol that was replaced. So obviously, a shtickle daichik says we can understand the sheet of par v'fil damoshel par. Now the pasuk says b'zois yavu aharon b'par, that he brings the par inside, and it means even the dam of the par. It says Rashi shim shachta harishon, that the first kohen gadol did the shchita v'irba psul, and something happened to him. Yavi aron mid damoshel El Kodesh. So then his dam is still good. It doesn't have to shacht another one. So havi matzalukma beis deis, right? So you can say that he did some of the zrika, and then the next kohen he can just continue. It's the dam shel par. He doesn't have to start over, and therefore it's possible that the first machshava, even though it was improper, then the guy died, which makes sense. If he had an improper machshava ben abadim, that would probably do it. But anyway, maybe that's the case. Hanichel man yer mit par v'fil midam shel par, amanem par v'lo midam shel par ma'ikememar. Right, according to that shita, you can't establish shtei deis. So amarava hachma'eskina and kigan shepigel berishayna. So what happened? You had pigel by the first one, which is what we said. However, shasek b'shniya, then he was silent by the second, so it must be you're going after the first. Yeah, but then upigel b'shlishis. Now the question is like this: that if he had no pigel, if he didn't have any machshava by the third one, then maybe we would have kicked in this svara. So how do you pigel piguli b'shlishis lamuli? Why did he have pigel at the stage 3? Right, we see not that we can't be samich on his first pigel. Right, he's like a machmir. He wanted to make sure that he definitely had pigul over here on the third. So the fact is, if there's a change in sequence and another machshava, it must be that the second one maybe was not al das rishayna. Because if it was, then the third one was also al das rishayna. But then why would he have had to have had a machshavas pigul? So Maskar Rashi midi shasa katani, he doesn't even say that. El Omer Rabashi hachamay askin going shepigul b'rishayna v'shniya. Actually, he had a machshava by the first and the second. Uv'shlishis, and then says Rashi v'shosek b'shlishis diakati havi chatzi mater diamrinan isal adat kol oisal das rishayna hu oisa mahadim b'pulig v'shniya lamuli. Okay, that's why there's like different gearses over here. Why did he have to be shosek by shlishis, right? So the fact that he was shosek b'shlishis obviously demonstrates that it's not linked, right? That's the idea about how to read that this girsa. So lamali. So we continue on with Beis. Va bain katani. It says bain. It says Rashi damashma ba'achas b'shtayim kasha. Okay. All right. So fine. Let's keep on moving. Omer Mar. So Rameir Omer Pigul v'chayv of karis. So he said that even if it's b'chatzi matir, there's mafal b'chatzi matir. Now michti karis so b'chayv ad shikru kol hamatirin. The only way you can be chayiv karis by eating this thing is only if you actually makriv all the matirin, namely the lavoina and everything. Says Rashi ain't mechayiv and karis al chilos psul ad shikru kol matirin. You have to have brought the whole thing. Dirmamar Yiratze, it's only Kishihirtzas Kasher Kachirtzas Psul. Mahertzas Kasher and Shikruvu Kol Hamatirin, Avirtzas Psul and Shikruvu Kol Hamatirin. You have to continue to go through all the motions, and you can't do anything else wrong. Now the problem is Vahai, Kivan de Chashiba Bifnim, once you already had a Machshava in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he's really not sprinkling blood, as it's now disqualified. So it's like throwing water that looks like blood, basically. So the chashibad bifnim pasli, so kim madi behechel maya ba'almahu de kamadi. So it's nothing. So because it's already puzzle. So how does it work, right? So amarava mishkachas la ba'arba parchim ba'arba seirim. So if it let's say the dam spills out each time. So you need to bring a new behema, and it's now the blood of a new one, so it's not like water since it's a new animal. Okay. Rav Omer Fil Tema Par Echad Asir Echad Leflugi Maratzi. At least when it comes to pigul, it is maratza to the extent that it's considered to have you've done the avoda to enough for it to be a mater enough that if you would eat it, you would be chayiv for chayiv kares. So it's like we allow this kula that it works, even though it really shouldn't work, in order that if you would eat it in this state, you'll be chayiv kares. Okay, Arbayim v'sholosh. So we said that how many times did the Kohen Gadol do the sprinkling? 43. Tanya Arbayim v'sheva. This is actually more Numa. 47. So kasha hakaman di oimir arvin l'kuranai. So hakaman di oimir in marvin. The question is, when we mix the dam with the par and the sirah together, do we also do an extra 4 applications by the chronos? V'stanya Arbayim v'shmoina. It's 48. Lokasha hakaman di oimir shirayin ma'akvin. Hakaman di oimir shirayin lo ma'akvin. So it's all totally on whether or not it's ma'akiv or not. Question. Now let's just keep on moving. Let's go straight down, and then we'll get all the questions. So, iboilhu. Now they're going to ask a question. Pigul b'hoylachamahu. We know there's an issue of pigul when it comes to, as we had this elsewhere, when it comes to the shchita, when it comes to the zrika, because those are matirin. How about when it comes to hoylacha? So Rabbi Yochanan, hoylacha kamitza. The hoylacha is just like kamitza. Reishal kashemer hoylacha kahaktaira. So the question is, so how does that? How do we understand this machlokas? So we'll understand. So Bishlam Reish Lakish, who says that the bringing of the item is ki'ilu, like being maktir it on the mizbeach. So ikanami haylacha de lavaina. So according to him, there is such a thing of bringing the lavaina. El Rabbi Yochanan my taima. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say this svara that it's like kamitza? So Marava Ksav Rabbi Yochanan kol havoida she'enu materas avoida chashuvahi lafagel leha b'fnei atzmo. So just like haylacha, as it could be passed, it's not required almost, because it could technically be passed from person to person, so it isn't an integral part of the avoda, and it's not a matir, so it's not chatzi matir to say it's not pigul, right? So basically what it's saying is that if, let's say, a person has pigul during hoylacha, that may not constitute as pigul because it's not an integral part of the avoda. Okay, so that's the idea behind this. Pigul b'hoylacha kaimitz mai, says Rashi, mi havi chatzi avoda, is that like half? Upliga rabbanan ad shefaga b'chol hamatir, kleimer ap b'hoylechas lavaina o lo pligi. So is that considered to be also that the rabbanan would argue that's like already chatzi matir, that because you had a machshava during hoylacha? So he says kamitza, the havi avoida shlema, then kamitza b'lavaina. Okay, so again, it's not something which is ma'akev, because as Rashi says, the actual hoyshid zel is that. So therefore, it's not going to be enough to be considered to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue of chatzi matir to say it's not pigul. Fine. Avoida chashuvahi lefagel leha b'fnei atzmo. It's considered to be by itself. So we already mentioned that if you have the two kvasim and you shechted only one of them, the avoda she'enu matirta, it's not an avoda which in itself is enough to matir, because you need both. Upligi, the non shachan echem kvasim lecho shtei chalos l'machar, you shechted only one of them in that machshava to regarding the two chalos, or your makdir one of the bazichin, one of the spoonfuls of frankincense. However, so why does the chamim? How could they say over here that that's the case? Because it is comparable, one of the two kvasim, that it's the same thing. So mi savrit lechem batanur kadosh. Are you telling me when it comes to the shtei lechem that it's when it enters into the oven is when it becomes kadosh? Shchitas kvasim mekatshele. It's only when the kvasim are shechted. V'bol kadesh kibol lahatir dami. So the shchita in this case is actually the matir. So Maser Rav Shimon Rashi Acherim Oimrim hikdim mulim la'arelim kosher, hikdim arelim l'mulim posel. So what is this going on? Sharashi says this is talking about the carbon pesach. B'shchitas pesach ma'iri, the shachat simin rishain l'moilim, simin sheni la'arelim. So let's say you have a machshava, and your machshava is the first, and you're shechting a behema, which you have to shech both simanim. So your first machshava is for people who are gemalt, which are allowed to partake of the carbon pesach, and then your other simin of the behema that you're shechting, your machshava is for arelim. So in this situation, your original machshava is proper for the moilim, and then the second machshava is for arelim. So hiktam arelim mamulim posel, right? But kaimelan the b'chatzi matir pligi, right? But not we don't see not a matir over here, right? So it's actually interesting because it says that if you do the arelim first and then the mulim, it's going to be posel. So what says Rashi? Alma bi'avodah she'ena materes. The avodah is not the matir. V'lo mekadeshes kivan hacha deleka lechem. There's no bread to tiskadish le shchita, and yet pligi nami rabbanon. Sharmulei mi saver dam bitzaver behema kadosh. Are you think it's the dam of the neck that's mekadesh it? Dam sakin mekadshele. V'bol kadesh kabol hater dami. Okay. So therefore, it's the shchita is the mater. Tashma b'medaber b'kamitza uvamatin kli v'hiluch. So my love hiluch daktaira, right? And therefore we see it's like Rish Lakish. Lo hiluch the matin kli. The hiluch is referring to of the Kemitza. So ihachi b'matin kli b'hilach b'matin kli meboile. That's the order it should say it. Halakasha tani hachi bolol haktaira. You want to be makter it. So bolol hoycha meboile. So bolol halacha meboile. Halakasha kivan the hoylacha tzarich haktaira he kari law haktaira. Since the hoylacha is linked to the haktaira, so that's why it says haktaira. Let's say then you have the Kemitza was Mishtika, so Hoylich Meboile Kasha. Okay, let's look at question 2. Rav Yochanan Hoylacha Kemitza, Reish Lakish Emer Hoylacha Kehaktayra. Well, Inyan Ma Pligi. So what exactly is this machlokus? So Hamafagel b'Hoylacha. A person, while they have the Kemitza, they have pigel regarding an improper thought while for the hoylacha, the transporting of this flour. Ihavi chatzi matir v'loye pigel. Since it's chatzi matir, because you're having a machshava on that, is that considered to be half? And therefore, the Rabbanan say you have to actually have the entire machshava on the hoylacha of the lavoina too, not just the hoylacha of the Kemitza, but also of the Lavoina, and therefore it's a machlokas there as well. So Rabbi Yochanan halacha kemitza v'lo havi chatzi matir. It's like the Kemitza. It's not chatzi matir. Reishokash havi kaktor b'havi chatzi matir, and therefore it's a chatzi matir. Again, that would be the machlokas Rabbanan and the Rab Meir. Okay, that's the idea behind that. Question TA 25. Well, madir mean b'fagav chatzi matir madin heicha de paga b'kemitza. So that is not an easy question. Okay, so let's get this down. Okay, so what is the din? Again, when we're talking about the following, is there a din pigel in the following scenarios? So if you hold ein mefalgen b'chatzi matir, which is the Tanakama, not like Rav Meir, right? Not Rav Meir. Because Rav Meir holds you are mafal b'chatzi mater. So, what is the din in all these other cases? So, b'kemitza uva matin kli havi pigel, b'hoylacha havi plugdem gemara. So we said Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish kiva de'enu ma'keves, right? According to the shita of Reish Lakish Rav Yochanan is a machlokas whether or not because the hoylacha is not ma'akev, so maybe that will be different. Vaktara lo havi pigel. Okay, so let's go through this again. Let's make sure we get all this. So again, if we're talking about, here's my pen, the Tanakama. So if you're in mafal b'chatzi matir. So what's the din if you had pigel on the Kemitza? On the Kemitza, so that is pigel by itself, right? Obamatin kli, if you have a machshava during the putting it in there too, so that's the shchita, and that is like the Kabbalah, but hoylacha is a machlokes. Obahaktaira, which is like the zrika, so in that case lo havi pigul. In that case, it would not be pigul. Okay, so again, the main piece is really this machlokas Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, whether or not we say there's a din pigel when it comes to hoylacha. That's TA 25. But again, by the shchita and the hoylacha, we do shchita and the Kabbalah akin to it. It is fine. And when it comes to the actual Hakatayra shall claim it's lavado bli lavoina. So if there's no lavoina, then that's not pigel, right? Okay, I'll have to understand what exactly that's going on. Let's look at question TB 28. Pigel bahazois shibifnim, uman der mefalgen b'chatzi mater, matai havi pigel l'kol yamati pligi amoroi I havi pigel umadua. So, okay. So, we said that it could be if there's shtei deis, right? Dehainu, there's a new kohen gadol, right? Kohen gadol acher, right? So in that situation, it's going to be we will not apply this concept of, let's just find the language again in the Gemara. It says that I should have underlined this piece. Shekol oisal das rishainahu oisa. Okay, so that is only in the event when it's the same person. But if it's a second kohen gadol, then in that situation we may not say such a din. Right? We're not going to say that din, and therefore the question is, how could it say bein b'rishaina? Right? That over here we have Rameir says one thing, and the Chachamim argue. They only argue, right? And that's where they it's a machlokus, right? Which is, however, and this is again, it's totally on the machlokus Rav and Shmuel, right? It's totally on the machlokus Rav and Shmuel. Whether or not we say, it's a little bit of a difficult question, whether we say al das rishaina huoisa, right? So it could be different between the first time that you have a machshavas pigul, but the second time you don't. Okay, and then we said if in the situation where this is TB 28. Where you have a machshava, and this they may be wanting this too, that you started off with das, you had pigul in the first and the second time, right? Or let's say you had pigul, and there's a lot more to this. This is a long question. On the first and the second, but not the third. There's different girses over here in the Gemara, as we said, right? Of a low b'shlishis, right? Alternatively, it could be the blonde, right, or the dam spilled, right? Okay, so there's obviously a lot there, but that's TB 28. Okay, let's move. Got a lot left today, so let's keep on going. We have the two dots. Let's find it. Okay, kasha. So hikdir shum. Let's say you break it down into small pieces, like the size of sesame seeds. Lechel shum, and your intention was to eat it in these small little nibbles. Ad shekola kaimitz kuloi. So Rav Chisda, Rav Hamnun, Rav Sheshes, Chadamer pigul, Chadamer posel. One says it's pigul, and the other one says it's posel, but Chadamer kosher. So this is a three-way machlokas, what the status is in this particular case. So Leima Mad Yomer pigul, the one who says it's pigul is Krav Meir, because you're breaking it up into like different parts, and it's like you're being whether you're mafal b'chatzi mater. Umandim is posel kurabon that says ein mafal b'chatzi mater. Umandim kosher is kurebi. So in the third opinion, who says it's actually kosher, could be like the shita of Rabbi. Okay. So who's Rabbi? So Rashi says, should remember this, I guess. Dermil El, we said on Daf Yadalad, Oimer ani shezeh kosher. I said it's kosher to ein chatzayin mitzdarfen, because we say that halves are not mitzdarf. So this is on Yadalad Amud Aleph that we said. According to the shita of Rebbe, that it's that halves are not mistarif. We'll have to find that Rebbe. It's Rebbe. The sign you hashaykhed as a keves. If you shech the keves leechol chatzi zayis mechalazu, v'chein chaveru echol chatzi zayis mechalazu. Rebbe Omer Anish is that kosher. Time of the Omer chatzi. Fine. So he says it's actually going to be kosher in that situation. All right. So that's the third shita, which is the third shita of Rabbi, who says it's kosher, like we saw in Dav Yadalad. Should have remembered that, right? All right. Let's keep moving. So let's say that's the machlokas. So my Dilma Adkan Lokamer Rab Meir Hasam. When does Rab Meir say this whole din of that you can be mafal machatzi matir el dechishiv b'shiuro? At least you had the machshava about the proper measurement of lahacha d'lechishiv b'shir lo. Here your machshava is on these broken little pieces, which is less than measurement. Yad kanoka amir rabbanan hasam el d'lechishiv be b'kulei matir, because your machshava was on the whole matir. Of lahacha d'chashiv le b'kulei matir. Then the pugil. Let's say this is the only matir, right? We're not talking about lavoina. Only this. So then, in that situation, so you should be chayiv. So what? They're smaller pieces. They're mitzaref to the entire matir. Yad kan lo kaim Rabbi Hasam el deloi hader malim oisa voida. Avol hacha the hader malim oisa voida hakanam the apostle. Here you continued regarding this particular avoda. Says Rashi, the lo hader malia l'shir achil oisa voida. In that situation, because it was chatzi zayis and chatzi zayis, shechishi b'kesev echad, Rashi says, you had a machshava regarding one keves, uvachala, hacheres, and the other chala, which is hishlema kazayis, would be mashlemit, two has to kazayis. V'chishi ba'oiso keves, lo ba'oiso chala. Okay. So maybe Rabbi doesn't say his din like that in this situation either. So it's not so simple that we should just be able to say that it's the same machlokas. Elo mandiyamr pigol, one who says it's pigol divrei hakoil. Mandiyamr posel divrei hakol. Mandiyamr kosher divrei hakol. What? So mandiyamr pigol divrei hakol ksavar derech achil bekach v'derech haktar bekach. It's normal to nibble a sesame size amount each time, and therefore, since this is normal, so therefore it's pigol. Mandiyamr posel divrei hakol. Why? Ksavar ein derech achil bekach ve'ein derech haktar bekach. Right? It's not the normal way of doing this. So v'havi kamincha shloi huktara. It's like you have a mincha that you weren't makter at all, because this is not the normal way to be makter it. Mandi oimer kosher divrei hakol ksavar derech haktar bekach. So this is the right way. You could be makter it this way. So it's makter ve'ein derech achil bekach. But since this is not the normal way to eat, so therefore it will be considered to be kosher. Says Rashi, okay. All right, so that is the idea. Let's look at question 3. Maybe we'll break it down a little bit to explain it. Hikdir shum shmim lechel shum shum, to eat sesame seed sizes, ad shekol hakaimitz, to basically the whole thing. Mehema tamia shitas maniber pigel, and why is it possible or kosher? So, as we said, we're going to say it's going to be pigel. Why? Because he holds it's derek haktar bekach. That's a normal way for haktara, and therefore, because of that, now that you did it in the wrong machshava, so now you eat it, you can be chayiv kares if it's derech achil bekach. One who says it's pasul says, yeah, that is normal eating, but that's not the derech hakatara. And therefore, it's only possible because it's like a mincha where you weren't makter it because it wasn't done properly. One who says it's kosher because your eating is nothing and the akatara is fine. So therefore, you were makter in the proper way and you didn't do anything even though you ate it, but since that's not the normal way of eating, so therefore, you're not going to be chayiv or anything. That's the logic in that. Okay, question... possibly TB 29.